Whoa, time for guest hosts. Whoa, it's time for guest hosts. Whoa, love the guest hosts. I just want a guest host. It's episode 20 of Guest Host Raw, the series where I look at every episode of the guest host era of Monday Night Raw. Well, folks, who would have thought we'd still be in this thing 20 episodes in? We are steadily approaching the halfway point of the original guest host run, and what a journey it's been. Thank you so much to all of you who have been joining me along in this journey, whether it's been from the very beginning or you came in late and you've been trying to play catch up. This has been some of the most fun I've had on this channel in a while, going back, rewatching these, I guess you could call them classic shows, and having a good laugh. And with every passing week in this series, I find myself, strangely enough, getting more and more excited and, dare I say, anticipatory over what lies ahead as we approach the second half of this series. But this week we find ourselves on the other side of the pond. WWE was doing a big European tour around this time, so we find ourselves at the Sheffield Arena in Sheffield, England on November 9th, 2009 for this week's episode of Raw, and it's hosted by a beloved Englishman, former light welterweight boxing champion, the Pride of Hyde. Ricky Hatton is hosting this one. Right away, I have a message for all of my UK and European fans. I now understand your pain and your confusion during the Ben Roethlisberger episode that we had not too long ago, because this features, local athlete, lots of local athlete references, very specific to those who live there or who really follow this guy and the sport. And I'm not one of those people, so yeah, a lot of the stuff we see in this episode is a little lost on me. Also, I am aware of the crazy coincidence that kind of befalls this week's episode of Raw, because in my research for this, I realized that Ricky Hatton sadly passed away last year, and so now, like 2 weeks in a row, Raw in this series has been hosted by a beloved Englishman who sadly passed away in 2025. The show begins with a recap of last week's main event, in which Jericho and the Big Show laid out not just John Cena, but DX as well, and stood tall at the end. And then we get the opening pyro, and folks, if I didn't know any better, I'd say we were in England, because we've got the big flag, we've got the trusses up above the stage, like crisscrossed like a Union Jack, I think. There's a mailbox, there's the phone booth, there's the car. Yes, sir. Pip, pip, cheerio. We are in foggy England town. They start off with the big announcement. Can the Viper regain his momentum against the strongest man alive, Mark Henry? Gird your loins to that match, folks. And then we get Justin Roberts introducing Ricky Hatton, MBE, to the arena. The local crowd's going crazy for him. He comes out with the Bella twins, who are dressed in like boxing gear, because who else is going to walk out with the guest host, folks? We got to have the Bella twins. And hey, we didn't have the Bellas walking out with Floyd Mayweather a couple of months ago, so we got to have him come out to boxing gear here. And I don't know, he doesn't seem very happy to be there. Maybe that's just his demeanor. He is very soft-spoken and, dare I say, kind of a little humble.
Welcome to WWE Monday Night Raw.
He doesn't have very much bombast. He does not project in his delivery. 9 times out of 10, he is very unintelligible. I have a very hard time understanding what he is saying, but I'm pushing through. I rewind and I rewind again to try and play it back. But he basically says, when I was kindly sent an invitation to come host Raw, I snapped it up in a split second. 3 years ago, I won a world title in this building, so it's great to be back here. I loved interacting with the fans and giving back to the people. And as he's talking like this, suddenly we hear Jeri-Show's theme, and the tag team champions make their way out. Finally, a legitimate athlete outside of wrestling that Chris Jericho can stand next to and be taller than. And of course, we get that visual of the big bad Big Show looking down at the smaller boxer. And he says, I had an English breakfast today that was bigger than you. I know you've knocked people out, so what? I've knocked people out too. Now it's time for you to get out of our ring, or we'll give you a memory you'll never forget. And then Ricky goes, why'd you have to be that way, Big Show? I'm a fan of WWE. It sounds Irish. I'll stop the accent. But he goes, I'm a big fan of WWE. I was a big fan of WrestleMania when that other boxer knocked you out, referencing Floyd Mayweather. And so Big Show goes, since you love that memory so much, I'll give you a chance to recreate it. I'll give you a free shot right here on the chin. And then after you tap me, I'm going to knock you out with one punch. And then Ricky's like, oh, I'm up to the challenge. I'll get a ladder. So Big Show actually takes a knee. He's offering Ricky to take a shot. He's about to rear back and punch him, but Jericho gets right in between them and stops. It's like, no, Big Show. I'm not going to allow yourself to get embarrassed by another little boxer again. You have more things to worry about. You have more important things like the Survivor Series triple threat match for the world title against The Undertaker and myself. Oh, so that match is happening then. I feel like there's this whole other world on SmackDown that the Big Show and Chris Jericho are involved in that has nothing to do with what goes on here on Raw. Because we know the reason Big Show betrayed the Raw team at Bragging Rights was to get the world title shot. So now we are just to kind of fill in the blanks ourselves, for those of us who don't watch SmackDown in 2009, that suddenly now Jericho is thrown into it because they are continuing to build this whole idea of the tag team champions not liking each other and the whole will they or won't they breakup thing. And it's like, why do we have two triple threat matches happening for the world titles on both brands at the same pay-per-view? It feels very, very, very lazy. So Show's like, what do you mean by that, Chris? And Jericho goes, well, I mean, look at me. I single-handedly beat John Cena by myself. I won for our Bragging Rights team. I'm going to beat The Undertaker this week on SmackDown. Then I'm going to beat the both of you at the pay-per-view. Big Show calls him Napoleon and tells him it's time to get his ego in check. And then finally, after they bicker for a bit, Ricky interjects and says he's got a great idea. He's going to put Jericho and the Big Show against D-Generation X, which, great idea, Ricky. That was the main event from 5 weeks ago on Raw. And put a pin in that number. It's an important number for later in this review. So Jericho's using all sorts of big words. He calls the people in the crowd dentally, hygienically challenged plonkers. They follow the whims of the ultimate hypocrite, Queen Elizabeth. And then Hatton, who, by the way, it's worth pointing out again just how overall unintelligible this man is, has the nerve to call out Jericho and tell him, you're here in England, you need to speak our language. So Jericho tries to interject, and Ricky's like, I know what you are. You're just a guy with a bad haircut. Now get out of my face. And he just gets right into his space, and he shoves Jericho away. Looks like they're about to have a fracas, when suddenly DX's music plays. And oh boy, I can't wait to hear what kind of British slang these two cool cats are going to pop off here. But there's a big ovation for DX, and then Triple H kind of like cajoles another one out of them before he gets to the point. But he goes to Big Show and Jericho and he says, when are you guys going to get the point? How many times are you going to do this before you figure it out? Like, Shaquille O'Neal embarrassed you, Big Show. Jericho, Bob Barker embarrassed you. You know, if we didn't come out here, you guys would be 10 seconds away from Ricky Hatton knocking the both of you out. And there's a big Ricky chant, and Triple H tells Ricky, well, we'll deal with the Honey Monster and Mr. Bean on our own. And then Jerry Lawler just chimes in, ha, Mr. Bean. Then Shawn's like, why don't we fight right now? He decks Jericho, and Jericho powders. Big Show's all by himself. He's rolling up his sleeves. He's getting ready to fight. Then he says, nah, and leaves. He goes to leave. And then Triple H and DX and Ricky Hatton stand tall. And Ricky Hatton says, if you're not down with that, I got 2 words for you. Fucking This opening segment was fine. It wasn't terrible, except for the fact that it is very paint by numbers. We've seen this pattern over and over again, but nothing amazing about it either. I did get a little pop when Ricky made fun of Jericho using his big words, and Hatton does seem like a very humble guy. The fans do love him, regardless of how hard he is to understand. So we'll see how it goes. So we know that next week, Raw takes place at Madison Square Garden. And we know this because they're spending an awful lot of time building up for that week's show, way more than they're building up for, you know, like this episode here in the UK. So we get a recap of Alicia Fox winning the Divas Battle Royal last week, and now she is in singles action against Kelly Kelly. And Kelly has got Gail Kim in her corner, and you've got Jillian in Alicia Fox's corner. And every time I see Gail Kim on TV at this point, all I can think of is like, what is she doing here? When is she going to leave? I think she's going to leave any minute as I'm watching this series. And then I remember, oh no, she's here till like 2011. The show graphic for the Women's Survivor Series match. And of course, since they already gave away Raw versus SmackDown in the previous pay-per-view, you can't do that anymore. So now it's just going to be faces versus heels, interbrand style, and the whole thing looks like a mess. Anyway, the match goes on. Alicia gets some heat early on. Kelly fights back, hits the big Hurricane Rana. Smart, sexy, and powerful, Michael Cole rattles off as Kelly does a bad-looking rocker dropper and a worse pinfall attempt. Alicia's able to drop Kelly stomach first on the top rope, hits her with that very nice-looking scissors kick to win, and she's got a little bit of extra heat going into the title defense against Melina. Again, much of the opening segment. This wasn't terrible. but it wasn't great either. It was just kind of there. They show a recap of WrestleMania tickets going on sale this past weekend, and we see all these people in Phoenix buying them up. And then we see Ricky Hatton walking through the hallway with his young son, shaking hands with some of the wrestlers who are also there. I'm assuming these guys are local talent, and I'm guessing at least one of the guys in the background here is related to Saraya. And so anyway, John Cena walks into the shot and shakes hands with Ricky and his boy, and John's like, hey, great job booking that main event tonight, but I'm feeling a little left out here. So what's the deal with that? And then Ricky, from here, I cannot make out a fucking word he says. He was like, well, you got more important things than indistinct, championship, which I'm sure you will, indistinct, tag team partner, that could have worked, but, well, we'll just see how it is. And then he and his son walk away, and Cena just looks up and, wow, what a great guy, what a smile. They give us an update on last week when Sheamus beat the hell out of poor Jamie Noble, and they give us an update where he says he's contemplating retirement. And to correct what I said in the last edition, he didn't stop wrestling totally here. He would wrestle occasionally as well with J&J Security. So this wasn't the end, but it's pretty close to the end. So Sheamus goes one-on-one with local talent David Deville up next. They didn't even say his name on the air. I had to go look it up. But, Sheamus, before the match begins, he's on the microphone and says, I'm going to do to him what I do all the time. I'm going to mow through this Englishman and make him look like a fool. Big boos for the Irishman here in England, by the way. And so it's another squash match. He's beating the bejesus out of this poor kid. No sad moaning sounds. So, that's nice. I didn't have to hear that again. But come on, man, you really got to up your game. If Jamie Noble can do it, I think you can. So he breaks the kid's back with his knee like so, does the brogue kick, has a think about it, and then gets him up again, does a big running razor's edge to the guy to beat him. So a big emphatic win for Sheamus as he continues on his journey. I don't think he's going to use the running razor's edge for much longer as a recurring move. He's not going to be wrestling a whole lot of guys as his push progresses who he'll be able to do that to. They put over Hatton Health and Fitness in Hyde. That's Ricky Hatton's new gym and fitness center that he's opened up, and they do a whole commercial for it essentially. It's like, wow, what great facilities and all this new equipment. And wow, talk about promotion that seriously outkicks your desired coverage, little, gym in Hyde. Now everyone around the world knows it exists. That's a great plug. And then we go to the Hatton Zone. We see Ricky Hatton chatting with the Bella twins. And this kind of reminds me of the whole setup with the Snoop Dogg stuff where oh, just now you're making small talk with a guest after you hung out with them for presumably a bit of a while. So Nikki says, oh, Brie and I have loved being here in Sheffield, so what are you up to these days? Very naturally. And so Ricky's like, oh, well, I'm promoting fights now. I got this fight coming up. This poster way in the back, it's out of focus. That's the fight he's talking about. And, oh, I got a new merch line that, you're wearing now. And I got this new gym that's opened up. And then they're like, oh, you should teach us a lesson on the darts. You hear really good with darts. And then in walks Santino Marella, dressed in this outfit, which we'll get to in a second. But he's about to introduce himself. Oh, hi there, Ricky, I'm. And then the Bellas go, Santino Marella. Yeah, that's a real natural fucking thing. When someone's about to introduce themselves, everyone around them just, I'm gonna say your name for you. There's a way more natural way you could have got to this part, because Santino's like, no, that's not what I'm called today. Who am I, Ricky? And then Ricky goes, that's my alter ego after gaining several pounds. Ricky Hatton, which that is a nickname he got in his career because his weight fluctuated a lot. And I guess this is something he did himself. There's a picture of him in this same outfit under his alter ego of Ricky Hatton. Again, strictly something for boxing / UK people. This totally went over my head. Again, I apologize to you fans who don't know anything about Ben Roethlisberger and football. And then Ricky's like, how'd you get so fat, Ricky Hatton? And then Santino's like, well, considering all the English food here, I don't know, but the ladies here love fat guys with bad teeth. Oh my God, just fire Brian Gewirtz already. Matter of fact, let's just get out in front of it and preemptively fire Gewirtz when he inevitably comes back to run creative after Triple H is kicked out. Fuck this awful attempt at regional humor, insulting the locals with this dated fucking teeth jokes. Come on, that's not even a good teeth joke. Then in walks Chavo Guerrero, who points out that Santino's in his usual spot of sucking up the GMs, and then he challenges Ricky Hatton to a game of darts. He says, I've won the Cinco Dart Mayo competition 3 years in a row. So Chavo lines up, he throws a dart, it misses wildly, and then Ricky just lines up and picture perfect, easy as can be, sinks a beautiful bullseye. That was great. And so then Chavo, for whatever reason now, wants to fight Santino. And Santino says, I'm not Santino, I'm Ricky Hatton. And then Ricky Hatton, the real one, says, I've got a great idea. Let's have a boxer versus wrestler match. And then Chavo's like, all right, yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on Ricky, pointing to Santino. And then Ricky Hatton's like, not that Ricky, this Ricky. So now he's put himself in a boxer versus wrestler match for later. Wow, there's an awful lot going on in this segment. And you know what? Credit to Ricky Hatton. You can't understand half of what he says, but he was there for all of his spots. There were so many moving parts about this. It's like, okay, have a chat with the Bellas. Now you got this interaction with Santino. There's going to be this unnecessary interruption by the Bellas here in this piece of dialogue. They're going to continue. Then Chavo Guerrero's going to come in. We're going to throw darts. We want Ricky to get a bullseye in this take. And then we're going to have more dialogue, and then we're going to make a match. And like, that's a lot for anyone to have to get down in one take. And that's what all this was. I would imagine that it took more than one take to get this done. It's impressive at how much ground they had to cover in this very silly segment, but I have to give them credit for that. Josh Matthews in the promo zone with the United States champion, The Miz. And so Josh asks, why do you think your team will win at Survivor Series? And so The Miz goes, does everyone forget what happened last month at Bragging Rights? Yes. He brings up how he was the only guy on the Raw side to actually win a match against John Morrison, and in 2 weeks, he's going to do it again when he leads his team against Team Morrison. And he says, my team are the faces of the future. And you know what? I went and looked at the match graphic, and holy shit, he's right. Like, everyone on The Miz's team, including The Miz himself, all future world champions. Yes, even Jack Swagger. And speaking of which, in walks Jackie Swags, who interrupts The Miz as he's doing his catchphrase and says, you're in awe of Jack Swagger, because who wouldn't be in awe of this two-time All-American American? And while he's cutting this promo, by the way, he is not looking at The Miz at all. He is like laser focused on something over here, like someone's holding up cue cards so he can remember what he's saying. And so he brings up, hey, 5 weeks ago I said I was going to stay undefeated in 2009, and I'm going to prove that when I beat Evan Bourne tonight. And then they bicker some more, and Swagger walks away as we get ready for our next match, Evan Brunn versus Jack Swagger, as this endless three-man jobber jerk between Bourne, Swagger, and The Miz continues unabated. Give me a fucking break, WWE. You're in the United Kingdom. How often do you do television from out here? How often do the live fans get to experience this? Give them some new shit. They're watching Jack Swagger take on Evan Bourne or Evan Bourne take on The Miz every fucking week when they're watching it, when it's broadcasting in America. Now they're here, you can't give them something fucking fresh? Mid-match, Swagger gains the advantage. Suddenly we hear The Miz's music play and he slowly makes his way down to the ring. That distraction is all it takes, though, for Evan Brunn to defeat Jackie Swags. And boy, it's a good thing they telegraphed that whole win streak thing he said 5 weeks ago, because it's over now. That was worth it. And so then after the match, Miz gets on the mic, he rubs it in Jack's face and says, that's why I'm the team captain. That's what they're fighting about ultimately, is who's the team captain here. Why are all the heels on this show so incapable of working with each other? Everyone on the heels spectrum is just so terminally stupid in WWE. We have the VIP lounge to kick off the second hour. MVP and Mark Henry are in the ring, and MVP doing his introductions. Mark Henry steps in and he wants to introduce the guest of the VIP lounge. He is the captain of the Survivor Series team. He's a guy with a lot of heart and drive, and everyone loves him. Everyone, let's welcome Kobe Johnston's Kingston. Kofi Kingston making his way out to a big ovation as well, and they're talking about a Survivor Series. It's going to be Team Kingston versus Team Orton. And wow, this is very interesting team makeups across both sides of the aisle, honestly. So they're really pushing Kofi here. They say, hey, what you did 2 weeks ago to Randy Orton's car, you made a big statement, but this was even more impressive. And they show highlights from last week where Kofi looks really strong against Legacy, diving on them, kicking Orton in the head, that sort of thing. And so they're like, let's raise a glass, let's pop a bottle and give a toast to our team captain, Kofi Kingston. But suddenly they hear voices in their heads, and apparently those voices include Jelly Roll and Pat McAfee. Legacy have now made their way to the arena. Orton, Rhodes, and DiBiase making their way to the ring. I like the added detail of like the security guard of the VIP lounge, and Orton like stares him down before he opens the velvet rope. I like that, you got to incorporate, your extras here like that. So then Orton has the microphone, and this promo is real dicey. First of all, at some point he lost the use of his G's, because for the first couple moments he doesn't have any of them. He's like, 3 of you are sitting here like you're on top of the world or something. The truth is, y'all ain't nothing but a bunch of low-class street thugs. And then he says, Mark Henry, you stole a victory last week. MVP, you're the definition of a common criminal. And Kofi Kingston, you should be in jail for what you did to my car. And the only reason that, you're still standing here is because I want to deal with you and I want to embarrass you in my own way, on my own time, essentially. And then Cody has the mic and says, Montel, you call this VIP? By the way, I appreciate that he called him by his first name. Even Mark Henry didn't call him by that, and they're supposed to be friends. He called him MVP in his promo. So he says, you look VIP, designer clothes, cute little watch, but your surroundings, not so VIP. A disgruntled outcast and an ex-con. Wait a minute, is Mark Henry the outcast in this scenario? I don't know how he is an outcast at all. Like, he's a former Olympian. What? And then Child Ted says, you think you're ballin' with your pleather couches and your $50 bottles of champagne? My bank account is way bigger than your bank account. And then MVP chimes in saying, yeah, your daddy's bank account. And then Orton wraps this all up by saying, the 3 of us, we're born into this business. We belong in this ring. And the only place the 3 of you belong is the hood where you came from. Oh, Jesus. Like, yeah, he went there. Kofi gives Orton a slap in the face, and then both sides are like, oh, they're going to fight. Oh, there's going to be a fight. Oh, going to be a fight. And then fade to black. And then we come back from break, and we now begin Mark Henry versus Orton. Wait a minute. Whoa. Can we talk about how fucked up that last promo was? Because first of all, yes, it was racist. Argue with your mother about it if you disagree. The last line Orton said absolutely cinched it. And if you were to be plausibly deniable about it, you could say it's more socioeconomic than race, but they knew exactly what they were doing when they wrote this promo. Also, wondering why the security guards weren't there to try and break up the fight, because they look like idiots standing there going, for a bit before the break. Like, use your extras. If you're going to have them there, try and get in between or something. I don't know. But yeah, there's no need for this angle to go there. And I have said before in this channel that racially charged storylines can work, but the racist has got to get beat. And I don't think Orton loses this one. The match is like decent. It's not that exciting. Henry at one point hits like 6 headbutts in a row to Orton and like he doesn't go down, which really makes Henry's headbutts look weak as shit. At one point, Orton goes for a sunset flip. He can't get Henry over, so Mark goes to pick him up, but psych, RKO out of nowhere, and that is how Orton defeats the strongest man alive. And then after the match, Kofi goes in there to check on Mark. Orton grabs him, gives him a slap, and then goes and runs away as Kofi tries to fight back. And yeah, I will say again, there's no need for the race card to be played in this angle with Kofi and Orton, but they cannot help themselves but put themselves into this. Like, okay, they know what they're doing when they take 3 of the top black athletes in your company and putting them together while you've got fans online who are pining, still to this day for some, for a new nation. And then you've got Team Whitey over here in the Legacy telling them they should go back to the hood. Who needs any of that? Like, who are you trying to convince that these guys are that? No, it's fucking stupid. Next week for the big MSG show, Raw gets a brand new intro with a song by Nickelback. Interesting. We then go to our much ballyhooed boxer versus wrestler match as Ricky Hatton takes on Chavo Guerrero. They actually call it a mixed martial arts match in the ring announcing. I'm surprised they didn't call it a sports entertainer versus boxer match, honestly. Ricky comes out wearing a sombrero, And in that instant, that is how I learned that one of his nicknames was the Manchester Mexican. So the rules are that Chavo has to win by pinfall or submission, and Ricky Hatton can only win by knockout. And this match is just a lot of, stalling, begging off, Chavo going into the corner when Ricky comes at him. Chavo tries a couple of takedowns. Ricky's able to kind of fight out of them. Chavo with a really low kick, and he tries another takedown. Ricky steps out of it, hits him with a really nice looking right hook, sends Chavo down, and then Chavo can't answer the 10 count. And that's over. Ricky Hatton wins the boxer versus wrestler fight. It was a short and sweet spectacle. It accomplished what it needed to. Ricky didn't look bad in this instance. And Chavo, as much as we are annoyed and frustrated by his lot in WWE, he is very good at his job. I am just shocked, though, and at least, he wasn't embarrassed by Hornswoggle this week. I was shocked he wasn't even involved in this very silly bit. But as I was thinking that, suddenly, we see him pacing around the locker room with John Cena. Well, that's where he was. And so Cena's like, look, you can't be wearing this DX merch because DX will sue you, and bam, you'll be out thousands of dollars. And then we can hear DX on the outside. We hear the H-Man going, John, he's in here. I saw him going in there. And then Cena's like, that's obviously them. You need to hide. And I just don't understand why we are putting the champion in this very silly storyline when we have just come out of several months of bitter, angry, ugly war and rivalry. And I'm not saying it all has to be that way, but you cannot go from this is an epic rivalry with anger and hatred and this and that to go boopity doopity. Oh, we gotta hide the little person. So we get more Three Stooges nonsense with Cena and DX, and they're like, we know you're hiding a leprechaun in here. And Cena says no, and then Shawn gives him a slap in the chest, and Cena makes a weird oh sound.
No. Oh, you're stashed in.
And Triple H even goes, hand over that Lilliputian. And then Cena goes, maybe you should focus on your tag team match tonight. And Shawn just goes, well, maybe you should which is huh? And then Cena goes, that's a personality problem and I'm working on that. What's the personality problem? You're not the one with the problem. But then he tries to redirect again. Maybe we should focus on the triple threat match at Survivor Series. What the hell, guys? You guys are hosting your glow stick parties. I don't ever get invited to them. You guys are tweeting each other all the time. And then the H-Man barges in and goes, hey, contrary to popular belief, we have never tweeted each other. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And Cena's like, I've tried that a couple of times. That's not important. So as they're wading through this awful, terrible attempt at gay panic, there is a point here where they're trying to deliver their lines, and you can tell that Cena and Shawn are at the point of breaking.
Don't try to distract us. I see what you're doing. Maybe I do. Or maybe I do. You want a whimsical leprechaun?
So then finally, Cena draws out Hornswoggle. He just calls his name out. And then we see Hornswoggle dressed in all John Cena gear. And they're doing the you can't see me to DX. And then Shawn goes, maybe we can't see you. But at Survivor Series, maybe we can see you. And then Cena's like, I don't know what he's talking about. And then Triple H is like, nobody knows what he's talking about. So then finally the coast is clear, and then Swoggle removes the Cena merch. He's got the DX stuff underneath, crotch chops forever, waka waka, holy fucka. I hated this. I hate all of this. Not only do all the backstage segments on this week's show suck a whole lot, it's just the writing and the dialogue for this particular storyline is so baffling to me. Because yes, it is very self-referential, it's very meta, fourth wall, haha, funny, but how is this selling me or anyone on the WWE Championship match with these three supposed badasses? What happened to them to make them go through the fucking cartoon filter? We get a recap of last week when the Osbournes guest hosted Let's Hear Crazy Train again, and then this felt like kind of a fucked up move on WWE's part because after they show the recap, then the live crowd hears Rowdy Roddy Piper's music and entrance videos playing. Holy shit, Roddy Piper's showing up maybe. Nope, they're just playing it to advertise he's guest hosting Raw next week. Well, goddamn, if I were in Sheffield, I would have been pissed at that. Hey, Roddy Piper's here. Oh no, he's gonna be here next week. And I got Jack Swagger and Evan Bourne for the 100th time. Well, I'm sure glad that they had that here. A lot of boos for WWE Champion John Cena as he joins the commentary table for our main event, DX versus Jeri-Show. Once again, a non-title affair 5 whole honkin' weeks after we already saw this on television. Cena mentioning on commentary commentary that he doesn't think that Hornswoggle should openly defy DX the way he's been doing, but hey, I'm just trying to help the little guy out. And I sure am glad he's been on commentary for this matchup, because he and only he at this point is addressing the issue of, hey, like, are DX going to work together in this triple threat match? Hey, these guys are really good friends. They like to have jokes, but who's to say Shawn Michaels won't try and tap into the Shawn Michaels of old to, like really dig down deep and get this championship that he and Triple H have fought and bled and sweat for so many years, because we're all fighting for the championship. I'm like, this is what you should be talking about, not fucking intermediaries for this Hornswoggle legal debate. To their credit, it's a good match. What a shock that these four individuals would actually have such good chemistry with each other after all this time. Cena just can't stop hammering home the point of, what if, Michael, what if they work against each other? If they work together against me, I'm sunk, but you never know. Again, it's way more interesting and intriguing than Cena harboring a little fugitive from DX. In the end, Big Show charges Shawn in the corner. He accidentally smooshes his own man, then accidentally punches him 4 seconds later. Again, very, very stupid Big Show. And then HBK pins Jericho to win, and Cena just reiterates, right place, right time. And so there's that. And so we've built in all this tension unbeknownst to the live audience. Only for the TV audience at home are aware that there's now tension between members of DX. Then after the bell, everyone's recovering. We hear Justin Roberts on the live mic saying, we're here to announce the main event for next week's Raw. We're going to have a triple threat tag team match. It's going to be D-Generation X versus Chris Jericho and the Big Show versus John Cena and his partner. And then we hear the gong, the lights go out, and it's the dead man, The Undertaker, has made his way out to the arena. Big ol' ovation. They're finally getting something exciting, folks. The Undertaker comes out to stand there at the entrance. DX looks concerned. Jeri-Show looks concerned. Cena looks pretty pleased with himself as we fade to black. A solid yet predictable main event. A really good hook for next week's show. I'm going to give this episode of Raw a 1 out of 5 rating. Sadly, it's just more of the same old stuff. The backstage segments are worse than they've ever been. More and more rematches. They were spending so much time pushing MSG, they left no crumbs for the Sheffield crowd, and it really showed. At least Ricky Hatton and Chavo Guerrero, as brief as it was a competent spectacle. The main event was really solid. That's pretty much the best I can give it. As far as the guest host, I give Ricky Hatton, MBE, a 2 out of 5. Again, the coincidence of the timing of these two guest hosts is pretty crazy. Also, just looking at the surface here, in 2009, these are just two Englishmen in a row with growing cognitive impairments for very different reasons. But as far as Hatton went, I really couldn't understand half of what he was saying. Again, the crowd clearly loves him. Clearly was, he liked being there. He seemed like he was a humble, modest guy. His stuff with Chavo in the ring was fine, but everything else in there, you really didn't need him at all. He just seemed like he was just kind of there to be there and little else, sadly. So with that said, looking at the all-time guest host rankings 20 weeks in, we are going to put Mr. Hatton at number 14, just between Nancy O'Dell and Sergeant Slaughter. But what did you think of Ricky Hatton as the guest host of Raw? How about this review? Let me know in the comment section. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to Wrestling with Regret. Keep your eyes here on Guest Host Raw, because in 2 weeks, we are going back to the States. It's going to be in the hallowed grounds of Madison Square Garden, and the Hot Scot, the Hall of Famer, Rowdy Roddy Piper, is the guest host. And it's going to be a new theme from Nickelback. That's going to be cool, and maybe a new one for this show as well. But until then, folks, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time right here on Guest Host Raw.